And I would even go one step back and would question if your company really needs OKRs. So that's the first step. I would say over 50% of the companies I worked with and who introduced OKRs while I was working with them didn't need OKRs.
You're bored, and that's why you said, I always wanted to try OKRs, and so now I'm ordering all of my people to use OKRs for whatever. They will find it out. People will start hating it because it doesn't make sense. This means they have their everyday job, and then on the side they have to create some artificial objectives and work on the side, and then it's like, oh yeah, okay, please manager, please tell me, do I now have to split my work, like 50% of my time working on these OKRs and 50% of my time to work on the real important stuff? That's not what it's all about. We're not doing OKRs for OKR's sakes. It is a powerful tool if it's used for the right problem. Then 3, 2, 1, let's go! Welcome to the Innovation Engineer podcast, your favorite place for picking brains of your favorite engineers. So grab your nerdiest mugs, fill it with a beverage of choice, and enjoy. My name is Tarek.
And my name is Waschi. And today I brought to you my, I would say, my nerdiest mug, actually. It's a Stormtrooper mug. I also got as a present from my colleagues because I was sick, and they created a great package for me with a lot of nerdy stuff. And in there was this mug. And I really love it. It's really great.
Yeah, and in this regards, you outperform me because I have my Deutscher Bundestag mug, which I got at some point of time at like a Tag der offenen Tür, Day of Open Door. What is this in English? It is kind of nerdy.
It is, because it's not like a normal mug, so it's kind of nerdy because I don't know. Right? So I was actually in the German Reichstag for the general election because in 2013 I was programming voting software, like which counted the votes actually. And I was in a suit in 2013 in the general election, like 24 hours next to the servers in the German Reichstag and maintaining our server systems.
Sounds risky.
Yeah, it was fun because there's all this high security stuff, and they need to check your background that you can enter because it's a general election, right? Sure.
Yeah, and my beverage of choice today is water because we have already like 30 degrees indoors. So I don't know when you're listening to or watching this podcast, but we are now in the peak time of summer. And summer in Germany is hot.
Yes, it becomes hotter and hotter. And I'm in a dark room, so I have so much light on. I have 5 lamps. And one even has an active fan in there because it's like a studio lamp just to get this room bright enough, even if it's like 30 degrees outside and it's so hot. And I have like a MacBook M1. Normally the fan never goes off or like on, actually. The fan is never on. But right now it's like going like crazy because it's so hot in here.
Yeah, it's getting hot in here. Let's talk about objectives and key results, OKR. And the reason, usually I do not really enjoy talking about processes or management tools. I kind of find this boring, but OKR really triggers me because I have the feeling everybody hates OKR and out of the wrong reasons. I think OKR is a deeply misunderstood tool, and it is very important for everyone who is not knowing OKR yet to learn this from the right source and understand what it's all about. And everybody who hates OKR, please listen to us when we discuss about what OKR is, why OKR can be valuable, and of course the other direction, how you can mess up OKR so that everybody hates it. Yeah. Waschi, what's your point on OKR? Do you hate it or do you love it?
Both. Totally both right now. It's a love-hate relationship. So it's a really hot topic. And I would say like 4 years ago, 2018 around, like nearly every company started to introduce it and it was like a trend. So it's like a must-have. So there was like one point in time where each company needed to introduce Scrum because it was a hot stuff. And now it's like OKRs. So if you're not doing OKRs, you're missing out on the hype wave. But that's it, right? It's a hype wave. So it's not for everybody. And I think nearly everybody loves OKRs. At first, it's my experience. So everybody is like super hyped for, OKRs. It will like solve all our problems. We will create a vision, mission and everything. And it will be so cool. And then like after 2-3 cycles, it's nearly forgotten. we still do OKRs, but not really, right? And people start to not like it. I would say some people even start to hate it, like especially some engineers. I've seen it in engineers starting to hate OKRs.
Yeah, yeah. If we take a look back where OKRs are actually coming from, I was surprised to see that this framework or this methodology is actually way older than people think. Usually you see the reluctance of, this is this Google tool, and now only because Google is doing it, everybody needs to do it, and that's why it's a hype. But it's actually something that dates back to, I read 1954, where Peter Drucker invented management by objectives. So it's actually, this framework is way older, and this already brings us into this direction, what it's all about. It's steering your company or your teams through objectives. And in 1968, there was the CEO at Intel, Andrew Grove, and he took this framework and developed it further, and basically created this OKR framework that we know today, so even from the 60s. And only then, in 1974, there was John Doerr from Intel, or back then he joined Intel. He took over these OKRs, and he was the one, if I understood this correctly, who brought this then to Sergey Brin and Larry Page, who then used this to build up their management framework at Google. So the history of OKRs is way older, and maybe this creates some sympathy about what it's all about. It's not like an artificial thing that was created by Google, but actually a way of management thinking, steering your company through objectives from the 50s. Yeah.
Going back to the background, in our last episode, we talked about drive and motivation, and motivation 3.0 and also management 3.0. And actually, Peter Drucker, it's like 70 years ago, he was one of the fathers, actually, of this way of thinking, that you don't work like in an old factory anymore, where you just sit in an assembly line and do stuff. Now you are like a knowledge worker, and he created, and he was one of the first people thinking about new tools to use in this age of knowledge, actually. So what's motivating for knowledge workers? Which environment do they need? How do you set goals actually for them? Because they are the experts. You're just a manager. You don't know the stuff actually. So what should you do? And he found a lot of answers. He wrote so many books, so I can't recommend a single book from him because he wrote so much stuff, right? So, but Peter Drucker is still quoted so much nowadays. And even the famous SMART goals, they come also from this kind of thinking. And objective and key results was an approach actually to not be a manager and say, okay, you're doing this, not micromanaging, but like creating a mixture between top down and bottom up. So it's like not everybody, it's super democratic, say what we do, but it's a mixture where you need actually work from both sides to decide what will be done, right? That's the nice thing about it. It's not the manager who does all the work, it's mixed. You need actually 50-50.
Yeah, yeah. And what I really like about this, even though we did not really explain yet why or what OKRs is. But the beauty of this is, from my point of view, that you give everybody, every single person who's involved in your company or in your teams, the same understanding of what you try to achieve, why you try to achieve it, and what the strategy is on the way to achieve these goals. And this clarity and transparency is super motivating from my point of view, because from the top level executive to the intern, everyone knows what they are working towards and why the decisions are made to go these routes. You don't have these individual goals from each department and everybody works together, and then people are praying that somehow everything fits together and we reach our annual goals or something like that. Yeah, and this kind of transparency is, from me, the biggest biggest plus for this framework.
For me, the biggest plus is actually two things. First off, you can create alignment in self-organization or in self-organized companies. So because obviously not every team should go in a different direction and have their own goals, but it's about like the company reaching a common goal. And how do you set this common goal? How do you communicate it? And the other thing is measuring progress. So in a traditional way, progress is only measured by revenue, which kind of sucks, right? Because that's like a single number. And I would say in lead startup words, it's a facade metric. It's not like a real metric. It's just like a facade, right?
Right. Yeah, and exactly as we discussed in the last episode with Drive, of course, money is always super important, and you need this at least as this hygiene factor. Yeah, you can't do business or you can't live without money in our today's society. So it will never be outside of your equation. But money itself should not be the purpose of what you're doing. It should not be the sole reason why you and your team and your company is working. You can do this, but then you will never create this high-performing corporate culture that really strives towards a North Star, a common goal. Yeah, and what we are talking about here is really trying to get the most out of your company and your teams, and create fun on the way there, because otherwise you can simply stand in front of like an assembly line and do things and get paid for this. But this is not what we are doing. This is not the creative, powerful work that we are doing.
We are talking about knowledge work here, right?
Yes.
So I forgot the name of this effect, which states that knowledge work always fills the time you actually give it, right?
Right.
So, I need to Google it. I will add it later to the video. The point is that in this kind of work we do as engineers, if you just double the number of engineers, you are wasting efficiency. And there's like this question, how do I get more work done in my company? And the answer is, if you have too much money, you can hire more engineers, you will not get done more. And I see a lot of companies just doing this, like throwing money as a problem. But if you're clever, you actually know that what you need to do to create more efficiency, to get more outcome and even output. Output is like you can get more output if you hire more engineers, but it's not wasted because it does not bring you near to your goal. And what you can do is like introduce methods like OKR to actually increase the alignment. And those actually, if you take different vectors, they all go in different directions. Obviously, the point you reach is not the farthest you could reach if all vectors, which are the teams, go in the same direction.
Yeah. And I think we already motivated this topic of OKRs, but maybe let's get one step back for everyone who's not familiar with OKRs or did not work with OKRs. Maybe we should quickly reintroduce what it's actually all about, and from an operative point of view, what a company is doing when they are working with OKRs. Would you like to sum up how OKRs work?
Well, I can go first, and then you can correct me on the things I missed out or said wrongly.
Okay.
So, as the name suggests, it's objective and key results. So the objectives are given by the management, and the key results are like agreed on or like suggested normally by the individual contributors and agreed on by the management. And what you actually, one step back, need first of all is management starts with a vision, right? A vision statement. We talked about it also in the last episode about some tricks and hints how to formulate a great vision, but that's what you start with. And then you create like a smaller step, right? For example, the vision of SpaceX is going to Mars. Obviously, this can't be your current mission because it's like 15 years ahead or like in the future. So you need a mission. A mission is more like a short-term goal. So mission could be maybe you are building a rocket which can land and it's not wasted. So, and then you create a strategy. A strategy is like for 1 year. I would always suggest 1 year. I've seen companies doing half year, but I would suggest a strategy for 1 year. How can we come closer to building, like, for example, for SpaceX, a rocket which can land again? And then you have objectives. And these objectives directly are derived from your strategy. Like strategy is done by top-level management. They think about, for example, if you're an IT company, you're selling a software as a service product, you could say, okay, we need, for example, strategies verticalization, because we believe that if we split our product or like personalize it for, let's say, restaurants or like for cafes or for like a barber shop, right, then we can create more revenue. That could be then a single objective in this direction. And normally you say you have 2 to 4 objectives. So I often see 3 objectives, because this is like the magic number 3. There's even the rule of 3 in different things. Google it up. It's really interesting to read the Wikipedia article about the rule of 3. And that's the objectives. And then depending on the size of the company, you break it down. Or like if you are like a mid-size company, I would say up to 100 people, 120 people maybe, that one level is enough. But obviously if you're a bigger company, you actually should think about multiple companies and you have sub-objectives by different departments kind of. And the next step would come up with key results. And those key results need to follow specific rules. The first rule is they need to be measurable. So a thing like reaching just A or B is not really measurable. That's yes or no, that's binary. So take something with a number and you can find different things with numbers. There's a lot of like literature about like finding those key results. And then set a goal which you believe can be done in 3 months because you measure each cycle in 3 months. You do like a start meeting where you agree on everything, take all these numbers, and afterwards you do a retrospective actually about this quarter. And your goal is actually not to reach 100% of a single key result, but 70%, because the goal is this should be a moonshot. Each key result you define needs a number and like a target number. For example, we want to improve we want to reduce churn by 10%. Our current churn rate is, 8%. If we reduce it by 10%, we have, 7.2%. That's our goal, actually. That should be a moonshot. So if you really think you can do this, then maybe increase it a little bit, right? This would be your key result. For example, if you are like in a team working on your checkout or an onboarding journey, whatever, this would be actually a good key result. And if you reach 70%, that's great. And obviously, you should do every 1 or 2 weeks, you should do a check-in. Check, did we reach it? Are we on course? And if we're not on course, what can we do? And what you have in the end, the key results should come from the team and management needs to accept it. So it's like a kind of negotiation. So sometimes or often you need like a coach saying, okay, maybe we could improve this, or management says, okay, we don't believe in this. And then you agree on it. Normally you have like, let's say 2 to 4 objectives with 2 to 5 key results. So you end with, normally you should not have too much because obviously in 3 months there's limited time you can do with your team. You have like up to, let's say 10 key results. Less is more in this general regard. And then you start working. And now we have the magic actually. If you work like, for example, by Scrum, you write your stories. Those key results, that's your business value. Either it is normally business value. We could do a dedicated episode just about talking about what is business value because it's so hard of a question. But if you do OKRs, you should always take your key results as business value. Or what's the value in doing the story? Well, we are trying to reach our goal and it's paying into this key result. And it's also about prioritization. If it's not paying into any of your key results, why are you doing it? Obviously, don't be dogmatic. You can't cover, depending on your company, you're in 100% of your like work with all key results. There will be other things. But in general, this is the business value. You can take a story into, like, say, your Scrum sprint with less business value if you can really convince everybody, okay, this is not paying into a key result, but for operational reasons, we really need to do it, or this is like a high-paying customer, we need to do it, whatsoever. But in general, this should be used as prioritization base, actually. Yeah. And that's the whole framework.
Yeah, and you already gave a lot of details. Oftentimes, whenever I try to explain this framework, people leave this conversation very quickly because they say, oh, it's so complicated. And I like to dumb it down a little bit. And I like to create a very simple visualization. And usually if you draw the whole way from the vision down to the actual action plan, you see something like this pyramid form. And on the very top, you have this North Star, this thing that your company is actually trying to achieve, this common goal, this vision, if you like. Yeah, for example, creating a human spaceflight, human colonization on foreign planets. Yeah, it's a very, very amazing high goal. And out of there, you have these, as you just said, this handful of objectives, these qualitative goals where you say, those are the things that we need to work on to get closer to our shared goal. And those are these objectives. Qualitative in terms of this is not what we factually reach within this quarter, but those are the topics, this qualitative topics like being the top place to work in Germany, right? If we want to be this, this is where we are going through. And then we have in the next stage of the pyramid, these key results, as you said. And those are the things that we can actually measure, where we see, okay, in order to reach this, we have to get this, create this Q&A document with so many requests from the web, where we see, okay, this is really valuable and people are going to this website and clicking wildly on this because it is so valuable to create this compendium of valuable information. And there we have a measurable goal. And this one needs, of course, be connected to the objectives, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be doing those. And on the very low level, we have this action plan, these so-called initiatives, where we sit together with the team and brainstorm. What do we actually have to do to reach these numbers that we created in the key results? And so we have this pyramid, everything is connected together, but every single part that we do in this pyramid is connected to this overall goal. Yeah, and so in this direction, I think the framework is fairly easy, without talking about all these nitty-gritty details in there, but the structure is very straightforward. And the beauty is that everyone who knows this pyramid and sees what we are working on sees that it is interconnected. And everyone is invited to challenge what we are doing because it is transparent. And this means if, let's say, your product manager says, we need to build this very particular story and this thing because, yeah, it makes money. And at the end of the day, we want to have money, right? You can challenge and say, yeah, of course, we want to make money. But is this in any way aligned to our overall goal, right? And if it's not, then we have to talk about if there are maybe other things that are higher prioritized because we have this common goal, right? And so this way, I don't say challenge everything and spend all your day discussing about prioritization. But if there are things which are obviously not connected to this overall goal that we are working towards, then we have a problem. And then this needs to be clarified. And that's why I think this pyramid of transparency is so valuable, because everybody knows why we are doing these things. Yeah? And even if you are saying, I'm not happy with the strategy, I do not think that this strategy will lead us to there, we still have a consensus of it is a strategy that might bring us there, but we generate the numbers to prove if it works or not. And if it's not working, great, we learned something, we throw it away, and we create another strategy to go this way. Yeah, and that's why I really like it.
Yeah, and you just mentioned the first point, actually, why people, especially engineers, start to hate OKRs. Because that what you just described is an ideal case that often does not happen. So what I've seen in many companies I worked for is like, yes, we did OKRs, we created objective, we created key results, they were good. Right? So even with great objectives, great key results, a great vision, but then I see a lot of Scrum teams just doing whatever. And I'm like, okay, why are you doing this? Yeah, because management said, and whatever reason the product owner or the product manager comes up with. And it's like, okay, you have this great tool, but you're not using it. Why align on key results, which you don't try to achieve? Because you are just taking random stories in there because there's a pressure, business pressure to do this. Yes, but you should prioritize, and you cannot do everything. And obviously, this is not part of the key results. So, that's when engineers become frustrated. And in the next cycle, after 3 months, they say, okay, they don't want to put any more effort into key results because why should we be? We didn't try to achieve them because we just worked on other things, right?
Yeah. Right. And I actually have a very nice story that I like to tell because it is the story that made me fall in love with OKRs. I worked in a company where it was quite chaotic. We had very, very good goals. It was a small company with several departments. We had marketing, we had sales, we had engineering. And everyone was 120% motivated and was on their own terms spending more time than actually necessary, like with 50-hour work weeks and 60-hour work weeks, because everybody was really, really keen on getting this company going. But despite all that work, we felt that we are not working efficiently. And that's why we said, okay, let's align our work and introduce OKRs, because this is this famous framework for aligning our work. And it was really, really painful because we were sitting together with the marketing department and the data engineering department and the software engineering and everything. And we were actually trying to find this common goal, this shared mission and these objectives which we can focus on to get one step further. And every department was bringing like their top 10 things on the table which need to be done necessarily in the next quarter, right? And they were all very different from each other. And so with 4 departments and each one had these 10 different goals, we had, and this is what I'm always saying with transparency, suddenly we saw that we were working on so many things, so many important things at the same time with all the departments that we kind of worked against each other. Yeah, and everyone was giving 120%, but we as a team, we as a company, were not moving in the same direction. Yeah, it's these vectors in all different directions. It's not because we are bad people. It was just because we were not aligned. And then we actually spent 2 days discussing what was really the most important thing to get one step further, and everybody hated it because they had to get rid of 80% of these things that everyone wanted to work on this quarter in favor of a shared set of objectives that we really need to work on. And every single week it was painful because the product managers wanted to sneak in some features because they said, yeah, but I really, really like it. It's so important. But we had to get rid of this to create these synergies that the data department that worked on the data sets was actually providing stuff that the engineers would need for these things that are then used for these marketing campaigns, that are then used to gather some new campaigns where the sales team was then particularly able to sell these things. And suddenly, even though we hated it because we had to get rid of so much stuff, but suddenly we had the synergy that all departments worked together. And even though we only worked on this one thing, but we actually were able to go forward. And this is like my favorite story for how painful it is, but it helped us to get things into the right direction. And suddenly it felt so good to know that these 120% of work that I was investing actually paid off, because together with all the other people, we were working towards the same goals. Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking it is painful and everybody hated this at this time, but it was so important to not waste your energy and waste your time in working inefficiently. And this is why it's my favorite story of how OKR actually helps you structure and understanding what you're doing.
And that, again, is also why a lot of engineers hate OKRs, because they think, just give me more time to just work in peace on features. I get more stuff done. I'm here. I'm paid to program and create code. And that's like the unnatural thinking, actually, engineers cannot cope with, that being in a meeting and doing 2 days just discussing what we should do as a company actually is better for the overall goal and helps the company more than like 5 engineers doing 2 weeks of software engineering, right? And this is like a fact you need to accept as an engineer, especially as someone in tech, that the value comes not from you as a single contributor, but software engineering is a team sport. It's about working together with others. That's why you have like 10 other people and 2 engineers, and you ask yourself, but we are building a software product. Why do we only have 2 engineers? And if you scale, if the company becomes bigger, communication is the biggest complexity driver. So don't think about technical debt. Technical debt is a myth. It does not exist, in my opinion. There's only like business value and reaching business goals and bringing the company forward. And you don't do it by being the best engineer, but by being the one who can play the best with everyone else, and especially the other departments.
Yeah. And you just mentioned like another misconception of Scrum, and I have the feeling in every single podcast episode we have these Scrum things that we mention. But it's the same thing. The software developer who says, just give me the backlog and I can go through it and implement everything and then it's done. Come back when I'm done. But that's not how a backlog works, right? The backlog is living, and this is a product development. So adjusting it and redefining it and rebuilding this backlog is exactly the essence of working agile. And this is what OKRs are also about. You can't just say, okay, we have this one goal and then we will meet again in 5 years when we reach it. It's like this living thing. And while you're working on it, you are learning and you are refining it and you are reflecting on this. And together you readjust your strategy and the path that you're going. And so there are so many similarities between working agile and working with OKRs, because it's all this way of thinking in your product. You are building a product. You're not working through a backlog, or you're not working through this Pflichtenheft, as we say. What's that in English? This list of tasks that need to be done. But it's this living thing. Yeah. And as a software developer, I don't think that this term of software developer is still something that exists in this way today. Today we have product developers, and the real efficient people with software engineering skills, they work in these product teams and they are part of this product development life cycle. Yeah. So for years, I didn't see this classical software developer person sitting on his desk simply working from task to task and just say, give me a task and I implement this and you have this specification and stuff. I haven't seen this for such a long time. I'm not sure if this still exists.
It does, especially in bigger companies. So I've seen those, and especially more in the American companies I saw, not in the startups,
really?
But also in bigger American companies. Yeah, because this like being responsible for a single part and this structuring in backend and frontend teams is way more common in other American companies, because it's valued in American companies. We have a dedicated episode about this. Check it out. What's it like working in an American company? Where I also said it. It's really important in the American culture to really know what you're working on. So titles and responsibilities are way harder in there. So they still have front and back end teams. What you don't see, and I haven't seen it in a German company for years right now. And I also agree what you said before. So in all the companies I worked in the past years, the most valued engineers are not the best technical guys who can like write their own caching system in C or C++. The most valued engineers and most respected engineers are the ones who know the most about the product, right? So those are always asked from other departments how something is working, because they know the bigger picture and understand it. And that's why I also believe in domain-driven design. It's like a learning journey, learning the domain and learning how a product works. So, for example, at my current company, I do a lot of like product introduction, like onboardings. So the first onboarding stuff I do with all new engineers is not showing them the code, not what tools we use, but showing them the product. So this is our product. That's our like other brands we have. That's how they work. Those are the features, because I believe that's the first thing you need to understand anything.
Right. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, but we should come back to OKRs, right?
Yeah, right. That's one thing that I also want to give to our listeners as a brain teaser, as something that is really representing OKRs. And this is the so-called 5 superpowers of OKRs, the acronym FACTS, F-A-C-T-S. And I think this sums up the quality of OKR quite well. F stands for focus. As we already said multiple times, everyone actually knows what we are working towards. Focus. Then the A for alignment. Since we know where we are going, we can align with each other and create these synergies and effective structure of working together. F-A-C. C stands for commitment. Yeah, because we all know what we try to reach, and we set these quarterly goals that we try to reach. We have this shared commitment and accountability where we say we really want to go there. And since we know that we are not wasting our energy, we actually can commit to reach these common goals. Then we have FACT, tracking. Yeah, and this is where these key results are so valuable. We are actually tracking what we are achieving. Yeah, and we try to reach these goals, and we can very quickly see if we are actually on the same track, on the right track, because we are tracking our progress. And S, F-A-C-T-S, facts, it's stretching. Yeah? And Waschi, you said this very, very nicely in the beginning, where you said, it's not that we are trying to achieve these 100%, but we are trying to make moonshots. We have these ambitious goals, because it's not about reaching these particular goals, but those are on the road to our overall objective. And so, of course, it's not this 100% and then we go home, but we actually try to go this step further. And that's why we set these these very ambitious goals, because what we are actually trying to reach is this overall the top of the pyramid, right? And that's why this acronym FACTS is so powerful, because it represents exactly why this framework is working that well if you're doing it right.
Yeah, and I would even go one step back and would question if your company really needs OKRs. So that's the first step. I would say over 50% of the companies I worked with and who introduced OKRs while I was working with them didn't need OKRs. So you only need them if you miss alignment. So there are also requirements you need to actually have to work by them. But if your problem is not that you can't measure your progress, if your problem is not that you're missing alignment, don't add an abstraction layer, don't add a new tool, don't add a method. Think about what else could we do to solve what is actually your problem, right? First ask yourself, what's your problem? If you say, my problem is I'm a good company, I have self-organized teams, they are split very efficiently, but we miss alignment, go for OKRs. I love them. They will help you a lot if you are mature enough. But for example, if you're a company which is still led by your founder, who has a very clear vision, and it's very clear what you are doing, and he's also dictating in which direction you're going, because founder-led companies, that's often the case, don't do it. Because what you also need is, first of all, you don't need it. And secondly, this will go in a very bad direction, because those kind of people can't let loose, and they will manage into your objectives. They will overrule everything because they own the company. They are not just the CEO, they are the owner. They are founder-led companies. So having self-organized teams is a requirement. So first of all, if you have a backend and front-end team, forget about OKRs. You can't do OKRs if you go by that direction. Even if you're a cross-functional engineering team where all engineers responsible for an area, and there you can do OKRs. Best is if you have really like multifunctional squads where marketing are in the same team actually, or as like the engineers as are the others. That's like your ideal case. If you're not aiming for this structure, again, OKRs may not be for you. If you have like an app team, if you have a front-end team, back-end team, don't even think about starting with OKRs. First thing you should do is think about the split of your teams, if it's a problem for you, because if you're growing, this front-end, back-end distinction will not work anymore. So at a specific point in time, like when you have like 20 engineers, you realize, okay, the structure we have, this is not going to work for scaling our company. And then you can think about splitting and giving them new tools to align everything, like OKRs. And the third pillar actually is data. So I have seen actually companies which have a great structure where everything is already split by the user flow, and in theory it's great. But then, again, my example from before, they say, okay, we want to reduce churn. If you don't have the numbers, that will be really hard. So, for example, one company said we want to reduce zombie accounts. But if it's hard to measure, if you don't have the data, then even your greatest key result will not help you because, okay, I actually don't know. We want to reduce churn. Finance said it's a problem for us, but I have no clue how to measure churn because it's really hard. We don't have events where we can find it out. So that's a tip actually for everyone who's using it. Take very few key results in the beginning, like per team, 3-4 key results are enough. And maybe your first objective should not be to reduce churn, but to be a data-driven company, because that's actually your goal. Your goal may be not the first step to reduce churn, but be data-driven. And then the objective is be a data-driven company. And then key results could be that you measure different things or are able to have reports about this. That would be a good first step. So a reason why a lot of engineers I met hate it is because they overstepped the goals like in the first try. It was like reduce churn, reduces like 10 key results, which you can't concentrate on, or like 10 things you can't measure actually, because the team says, okay, our goal was be a data-driven company, and we said we want to do 5 A/B tests, but we have no tool to do A/B tests. We have never done it before with our team. So then they will be really demotivated because they think, okay, we are missing actually the foundation to even do this.
Yeah, and I think the most common way of destroying OKR, the value of OKR, is to introduce it where you don't need it, right? So as you said in the beginning, you need to understand what problem you're trying to solve, because OKR is a tool, and it is a great tool for a certain set of problem that you have. But if you simply always wanted to try a forklift Yeah, and that's why you bought a forklift and make everyone train on the forklift, and then you need your people need to use the forklift to drive in nails into wood, because you always wanted to use a forklift. People will start hating the forklift. And this is exactly with the OKR. If you're bored, and that's why you said, I always wanted to try OKRs, and so now I'm ordering all of my people to use OKRs for whatever, they will find it out. People will start hating it because it doesn't make sense. This means they have their everyday job, and then on the side they have to create some artificial objectives and work on the side, and then it's like, oh yeah, okay, please manager, please tell me, do I now have to split my work, like 50% of my time working on these OKRs and 50% of my time to work on the real important stuff? That's not what it's all about. We are not doing OKRs for OKR's sakes. It is a powerful tool if it's used for the right problem.
Yeah, there are two cases where this is especially tricky. The first is if you work project-based, like in an agency. So obviously your different project teams don't need alignment. So just because OKRs are a great tool, introducing them and then having goals like, yeah, we want to be a great employer. Our objective is to be more known. Let's write more blog articles and go to conferences. This is directly the opposite of what the actually task of the team is. By like they work on a specific project for a customer and try to reach the goal of the customer. So there is also a lot of literature about introducing OKRs in agencies. It's possible, but it's way harder. You should ask yourself, what's your goal? So that would, again, need like a special episodes just talking about agencies. We did this too at like in 2017 or 18, like when we worked together, Tarek. We introduced OKRs because we had no vision and mission for our agency. And I would say the outcome was catastrophic. It was like, okay, they were demotivated, like writing more blog posts, doing this stuff. It was just extra work. And they asked like, okay, but where can I book it? Because we need to book our hours to projects, and we need to like reach actually a money goal with our team. Because we had independent teams who could acquire their own projects, who could say yes or no to projects, which itself was great. So we had autonomous teams working on autonomous stuff, but we didn't need any alignment actually. In this case.
Exactly, yeah. And I think this is a very special case, because it's not, the agency that we were working for was not like a classical agency on the free market doing what other agencies are doing. And I directly see this example of where even in agencies, OKRs can be very valuable. And those are these agencies, which need to find, which have an actual problem. And this might be becoming obsolete, right? Because maybe you're working in a specific industry or a technology field where you see that every moment now this industry can change, this technology can die, and so we will all be out of a job if we are not able to adjust. And so you might have, as an agency, the goal of redefining your niche and keeping track on your customers and being able to pivot into a certain direction so that you are not becoming obsolete. And so this progress, for example, can again, through the agency, be steered from upper management down to the developers, staying on top of certain technologies, on certain trends, and working together with these customers for long-term project relationships. And these things can modify your everyday behavior, because then it's not only an arbitrary project that you're working on, but every developer working every day together with a customer, reducing maybe their workload down to 80% to do more networking in these companies, because your company agency strategy is working on creating long-term relationships. And suddenly you have things like objectives within this agency which are changing your everyday behavior. So there might be strategies or might be events where your company, your agency needs also OKRs or could use OKRs to work on the same things, right? Not necessarily, but there are these cases, or where your USP is actually innovation, for example. Your USP is to create patents on the market, because only if you are creating 100 patents per year as an agency, you stay relevant, because this is the USP why these top companies are hiring you. And if you stop working on creating patents, people will stop hiring you, and there again you have like this overall strategy which you can go through your teams and align so that you can reach these goals. So if you have this particular goal with your team, your company, which you have to reach, then even in agencies it is applicable. Yeah, but it completely depends on the way that your agency is working.
Yeah, the normal case, it will not help your agency. So, because most agencies work differently. There are two agencies where I say they are great and they work in very specific ways, like Saltworks, for example, is the one, and Tarent, the other one. It's like a German one, Tarent. They have like a lot of free time for the engineers to reach those goals. But this is hard to achieve. Like the average agency should not introduce OKRs, in my opinion. And if you want to introduce them, give me a call first. I will do free consultation for you to tell you about mistakes you should not do.
Yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, if you say if you take agency as the classic agency as body leasing, yeah, your agency has people, has bodies, and you're renting them out to fulfill certain tasks. Yeah, this is a certain kind of job, but you might even argue that this is not this. How did you say it? Like brain work, knowledge work, creative work. It's more like a conveyor belt work. They get software packages, they build them, and then they go to the next client, right?
I don't agree. I don't agree. It's possible this way, but we would need to do a special episode to talk about our experiences working for agencies, right? So this would, but let's stop with agencies here, and let me tell you about the second case where it could go terribly wrong. I worked for a company. They introduced OKRs and did it on a personal level. Like each engineer had their own key results. Not each engineer, each employer actually, like because they introduced it like company-wide. Around 60 people, a company was around 60 to 70 people at the time. And I was arguing so much against it. I said, okay, this is team sports. You want team goals. You don't want to measure a single person on reaching the goals because then they will not work on the stuff which is important for the team. This is like a team game, right? I couldn't convince them. So they did it like for 1 quarter. And they said, yeah, but it's just an experiment. We're going to try it. And I was like, okay, first of all, you're wasting time. You're wasting work. You already know it better. So, and you can burn the topic so bad because this will be so demotivating because obviously everyone worked in a team and they're like product manager or team lead whatsoever dictated what they work on. They didn't get time to stuff. And they all had like stuff to do in the key results they could never achieve because they miss the autonomy actually to decide themselves what they work on because the team decides, not a single individual person.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I could argue against this. Even individual OKR, if you, for yourself, using OKR to manage yourself, it's like using Jira for managing your own personal task as a one-man team. You can do this. It might even help you understand what the difference between objectives and key results is. So you can do this, but of course you're missing the point, the big picture of using OKRs to align the teams. And especially if everyone is using OKR for themselves and they are conflicting with each other, then of course it's a very bad idea because you're using the tool again to work against each other. Yeah, but I don't think that necessarily it is impossible. It's not impossible to use OKR for self-management. You could do this if this fits into this overall structure, but it's not really the point. This is not really why OKRs are existing.
Yeah, you're not solving a problem here.
Yeah.
Oh, and a third case comes into my mind. So there was this one Swiss-based company from Zurich, which I don't want to name, and that was actually the first company where I really saw OKRs in the wild. I read a lot about it before. So I read books, I read articles because they were the shit for years, thanks to Google. And I'm always reading the hottest books also. And this was the first engineering company that a SaaS product, software as a service product. And I first thought that was a great example of using OKRs. It was my first thought. It was in maybe 2016, 15, I'm not sure anymore. And nowadays, I think totally different about the key result they had because they were very technical key results. So I used them as an example for the next years, actually, as a good example. But nowadays, I would use them as a bad example. For example, one key result was per team to reduce technical debt. So the problem is you cannot really measure it. So this is like very artificial. Secondly, it does not pay into any business metric. So your business metric, obviously, there are problems in your architecture which prevents you from doing things which you should work on, for example, to scale your product. But then your goal is scaling your product and not, for the sake of it, work on technical issues, like and working on technical debt, which I don't think exists because your product is working, you're selling stuff, so it can't be a debt because why? I once built like a PayPal integration in 2014. And we never finished like the last phase. So we always said, yeah, this is technical debt. But nowadays I would say, yeah, okay, maybe there were some features missing, but still we sold like 1 million subscriptions with this service. So obviously it worked, it was finished. So this was no debt because it was working. This is like one thing I can give anybody here who tries to define key results. Don't make them technical. Or like too technical. Always think about your business. Technical goals are not meant to be key results.
Right. Unless they are directly connected to your key results because you are a vendor for software and your software needs to reach these technical thresholds or something like that. Yeah,
like medical software, for example, or like for example, rocket science.
Yeah, or you actually provide a platform for other businesses to work on. Then your technical details are your business. Yeah. But always keep this in mind that the business is what you're trying to build up.
Those are actually all points I had and which came to my mind, actually. Do you have other things like hints for like people introducing OKRs or stuff you saw going totally wrong?
I think I already mentioned the main points that I want to make. And I think the most important thing is that you understand what you're doing and why you're doing this. And if you're not open-minded to what you're trying to achieve, then it's the wrong way of doing. You can't force someone to use a tool and then expect them to love it. And that's we can directly go to like the bullet points of this episode on and the things that we want to give everyone to keep in mind. And my first bullet point is actually to understand before you're doing this. And in this particular case, this was also, maybe this is something that I still want to give out. If you say, let's learn by doing, learning by doing, this can be harmful. Because changing your way of working with OKRs can be disruptive to your regular way of working. And if you don't understand why you're doing these things that you're doing and you're not open-minded, you might start hating it before you understand it. And so I think with OKR, actually understanding this pyramid structure of going to a certain place and understanding the value of this common North Star is essential to open your mind for the value that you're creating and for asking these questions. And all these questions of, are we still aligned and why are we doing this? Those are not out of spite or not out of making someone angry, but they are actually for your shared benefit. So the bullet point that I try to do with a lot of words here is understand it before you do it.
The second bullet point I would say is most of the time you don't need OKRs. If you don't have the problem of that you don't have alignment, if you don't miss alignment, or if you can't measure progress. So if you already are aligned enough, if you can measure progress, don't introduce OKRs just for the sake of it. So I have seen companies where the management gives out great mission statements, product managers do great work and so on. They didn't have any problems with alignment. In this point, don't introduce OKRs.
Nice. My third point is rhythm. And this is something that, again, reminds me on Scrum or Agile. You learn to work in this rhythm. And you said this before, check in maybe once per week or once every 2 weeks on where you are, why, if you're still on track. Because this trains your mind to think in these iterations, to think about with every day, with every step that you're doing, you're working towards a certain goal. So creating this rhythm helps you getting into this mood, into the structure of this management tool. And this is not particular only for OKRs. As I said, it's for basically all the Agile frameworks as well. Learn to work in these rhythms. Iterations, yeah. In Agile, we call them iterations, right?
Yeah. So and my fourth point would be, don't be too technical. Your goals and especially your key results should come from the business. So think about like business metrics as like your key results, and don't take anything engineering related like test coverage, except if this is your business goal for whatever reason. So always think about your business goals, and key results should come from that.
Yeah. And I have a bonus point, which is stay agile. OKR does not work against agile methodology. Even though you created quarterly goals, you are still working on your product. And this means always keep reflecting, always do retrospectives if you're still on course, because even these quarterly goals, they are not sizzled in stone. Yeah, you are still reflecting on what to do, and you are still adjusting if it's necessary. Yeah, so even if we talk about quarterly goals, you are still working in an agile way towards your goals.
Okay, now I also want a bonus point. My bonus point is less is more. So start with very, very few objectives, few key results, and try to take it very slowly. If you have like 3 key results at the beginning per team, that's more than enough.
Nice.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about next week, actually?
I have no idea.
Oh, that's great. So I guess then next week we will talk about the perfect hardware for engineers. Which keyboard should you get? Which headphones? Which mouse? Which whatever, actually. So what's the coolest equipment for an engineer?
This is I was thinking about if this is a good topic for us, but it's actually very, very important, especially in this age of working remotely. The individual hardware that you have is essential for doing high quality work. And so I have a lot of opinions about that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, and I can give you a short spoiler. Tarek, I hate your keyboard. So see you again next week at the same time on the same spot. Stay healthy.
See you there. Bye.